Yo, so him. This is a new film from Justin Tipping. He co-wrote it with Zack Akers, Skip Bronkie. Right, the film is produced by where is this? Ian Cooper. Who else do we have? Win Rosenfeld, Jamal M. Watson, and Jordan Peele. It's executive produced by Marsha L. Swinton, Kate O, David Kern, Skip Bronkie, and Zack Akers. It's co-produced by Tyriq Panzitnik, and it is associate produced by Sierra Dunbar and Daniel F. Larson. Okay, so Bobby Krilk took care of the score, also known as the Haxon Cloak, right? Kyra Kelly was on cinematography, right? Taylor Joy Mason edits the piece, with Cameron Kuba as casting. Right, production design, we have Jordan Ferrer, Tyler Standen, and Chikaku Suzuki on art direction. Kelly Jo Tinney is set decoration, with Dominic Dawson on costume design. All right, hair and makeup, we have Brian Baddy, Anna Callie, Megan Dorm, and Sincere Giles, Jared Gray, Latoya Henderson, Jennifer Jane, J. Anthony Kozar, Katie Luce, Madeline McHugh, Carla Munsey, Betty Nicey, Alexander Lawson, Denise Pugh Ruiz, Jennifer M. Quinteros, Yale Rosas, Steven Sanchez, Shane Shizaboran, Joanne Stafford Cheney, Martina Sykes, Lawrence Gant, Ryan Gumpher, and Juan S. Nunez III. So they were hair and makeup. Then we have got where do we jump to next? Okay, so we have Josh Bowen, Roland Bruno, Daniel James Chavez, Austin Durden, Andrew Franklin, Travis Gomez, Khalif Guzman, Craig Henningson, Tekla Haitorva, Terrence Julian, Ashley Kim, Efka Krakajuice, Michael Lear, Glenn Love, Mike Majeski, Spencer Mulligan, Kyle Potter, Devonte Antonio Thomas, Jahil Wallace, Travis Wong, and Justin Yu on stunts. Right, so then that takes us to our cast. Right, so we have got Marlon Wayans as Isaiah White. Right, Julia Fox is his wife, Elise White. We then have got Cameron Cade, played by Tyriq Withers. Right, his his dad, Cam Senior, is played by Don Benjamin. We have got his mum, Yvette, played by Indira G. Wilson. His cousin, Murph, is played by Gupadad 4000. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise known as Akeem Ali Douglas Hayes. Right. We have got Tom, his manager, played by Tim Heidecker. There's Marco, Isaiah's personal doctor, played by Jim Jeffries. Malik, a trainer, and played by Morris Green. Former MMA fighter Morris Green. Right, we got Drew, played by Jaron McKinley. Jasmine, played by Heatherlyn Harris. Who else do we have? Okay, Richard Lippert is the Savior's owner. Majori, a crazed fan, is played by Naomi Grossman. Cam's girlfriend, Adrian, is played by Tyriq Withers. Oh, yes, I thought I recognized her. Sid is played by Chase Garland. Willis, played by Norman Towns. And Iron, played by Gigi Anetta. Okay, so the gist of the film, right? So, essentially, people, a young athlete descends into a world of terror when he's invited to train with a legendary champion whose charisma curdles into something darker. Right, so that's the gist of it. And yeah, like, I've been interested about this film, right? Because it was, a different kind of horror film, right? Set around sport. Right? We've had things like The Fan back in the day, which was interesting. But, we don't get a lot of horror set here. So it's just like, okay, right? It's the weird thing about this film is you just hear it being like a film from Jordan Peele, right? And I get Jordan Peele is a big name, right? That, you know what I mean? I understand that. But surely, right? You want to promote the person who's actually directing the film and the people writing the film because it's on their shoulders, essentially. You know what I mean? Right? If it's bad, it's on them, right? So, yeah, I think that's the big one. And this is just the second film from Justin Tippings, right? His first film was in 2016. So, a big gap. Now, he has spent a lot of time working in TV. So there is that. But yeah, that was the weird one. But, it's whatever studios think can push the needle these days, right? But yeah, looking at this film, right? So we start off with a young Cam, right? He's with his mum and dad and they're watching essentially the Super Bowl, right? But this isn't set within the NFL. It's the something like the USF, or I forget what the league was actually called, but yeah, it's not set within the NFL, but they're essentially watching the Super Bowl. So they're watching that, and in that final, the star player Isaiah White gets injured. So they're watching and they're talking, and because young Cam, right, he plays ball, and so they're like, yeah, you can get to that point, right? You can be that. That's the big talk. You know what I mean? Grooming Cam to be great. I think one of the interesting things is, like, do you want to be the GOAT, right? And you yourself can't really give yourself that designation of GOAT, right? That's the kind of title that's bestowed upon you. Because what always happens is you then get compared with the other greats, right? And it's just like, okay, but what was their route to the thing? You know what I mean? Did they have to play against as tougher teams as, right? What was the game like compared to their, all those questions? So you might be winning shit, but they might go, you're not the GOAT because it's a lot easier. It's a lot safer. They changed the game. They made it easy. You know what I mean? There's all those kind of things. So you can't really give yourself that acronym, right? But that is the film, right? All this talk of Cam being the GOAT, wanting to be the GOAT. And we then jump forward in time, and now he is ready to go into the combine. And the combine, right? That's when all the players from college, they are throwing their hat into the ring to potentially be drafted for, as I say, the NFL, let's just say, right? Where they, run, catch, throw, all these different things to show their prowess. And just before this happens, he gets injured. Well, yeah, I'm just going to say that. You'll watch and find out what happened. But, so he doesn't enter the combine. And because this happens all the time, players don't enter because they're like, yo, my season speaks for itself, right? You've got all the numbers from that. I don't really need to do this shit. Sometimes that works. Other times it means they go further down, right? And because of all of this, Cam gets invited to train with Isaiah, right? Isaiah's like, yo, I want to see what you're like. And then if it all works out, we'll give you a contract with the Saviors. So we see him go to this. I mean, the compound it's this weird kind of building, right? Kind of futuristic, kind of medieval. Kind of like a weird Apple store, right? Or no, like the Apple headquarters, right? Is kind of a weird version of that. And as he's, training with Isaiah, right? All this weird shit starts to happen. Now it says like the longer he stays with Isaiah, the charisma like curdles. I would say that, it was off key from jump. Right? It wasn't like, being a few weeks, then suddenly the curtains pull. No, right? From the beginning, it's weird. So you're kind of like, okay, all right. Well, what's dude gonna do? But he's, in it, right? He's being kind of brainwashed to thinking that he needs this. Without this, he won't get anywhere, right? He won't get a contract. He'll be nothing. So we have all of that. Now, this film, it looks like visually, style-wise, this is slick, right? It's real slick the way they do it. You know what I mean? And like we have playing out all of these things, and because of something that happened to him, we then have these blurred lines a lot of the time. So we'll have events happening and then these weird kind of visions and morphings of reality, and that all plays out really nicely, right? They do it with this, yeah, it's very artistic, stylish. So all of that is like, okay, nice, right? It's very dark because it's kind of like demonic, right? And here's the thing, because we get a lot of kind of like weird religious iconology and kind of like these religious I can't think of the word for it, but like there is a word for like like you get in museums, right? Like the kind of layouts, as it were. So you get those kind of things. Like there's one scene that looks a bit like the Last Supper, right? With Cam sitting in the middle and everyone on this long ass table. So we get a lot of those type of sets, right? Because it is all wrapped around this kind of cultish ideal, right? So you can see what they're trying to say. Like there's one bit where they equate the draft to like slavery. Now we've heard that before. I mean, maybe you haven't, but it's been said, right? And also like the rituals of adulthood in certain tribes, right? Like how the young kids would have to go and do these things, and sometimes it would be like drinking of the blood of an old warrior, or I mean, yo, I remember listening to JRE, right? Rogan was talking to a guy that was he'd gone and lived, I think, in the Amazon or something like that. And there were certain tribes where they were talking about certain rituals and things. And they were talking about this one tribe where, like, the elders would all take one of these young kids, and to be a man, essentially, these kids had to give these old dudes head, right? Which is fucked up, man. I'll stay a kid. You know what I mean? If to be an adult, that's what you gotta do, I will stay a kid, son. You know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck? But yeah, there are all these, rites of passage. You know what I mean? And that's what they're equating the draft to, right? So we have these kind of things thread throughout the film, right? And it is talking about, right, like in this one, the people pulling the strings, right? The people owning the club are these old white dudes who, like some of they're kind of preying on the youth of these players. And I think, we've seen that a lot, right? Especially, where all these years where the players in college, like collegiate level, weren't getting paid, right? But the universities, the colleges, would be making so much money off of their likeness, their name, selling, t-shirts, jerseys, just all of this stuff. But the players saw nothing. And then if the players took any sort of sponsorship, they would be banned, expelled, just all of these things, right? And that aspect of the game is kind of played up in this film, right? So you can see what they're trying to say, right? The way they're trying to frame it and show it, right? Because there's only so much room. When you think about all the kids who go to college, right? We've got all of these teams that are playing each other week in, week out. And only, I think it's like 1% or 0.5% of those players will ever make it to the NFL. Right? So that means there's only so much room at the top. Right? So the big thing is, what are you prepared to do to achieve your dream? Right? That is another, right, tentpole of the film. Right? So we see what they are trying to say, what they're trying to do. Does it work? Not really. Right? I think one of the big things is we have, well, firstly, you learn about a thing that happens at the beginning of the film is down to something else, right? And you're just like, well, firstly, that makes no sense, because you wouldn't, there's so much in the action to be able to go, okay, if we do this thing, this will be you can't do that. You know what I mean? So it would be such a crazy thing to be like, yo, yes, we're going to do this and that's going to achieve these, because you would never know. You would never know. Right? So there's that. And then you've got like all of these weird things that are going on, and you don't really get him, can question it, which does seem kind of bizarre. Right? There should be a point where you're just like, you know what? Nah, I'm not. Right? But you don't get that. Plus, like, the repercussions of some of these things. Right? And especially, I guess, the way the film ends. You're just like, okay, but how you sell that? Right? So there's things in this, as I say, you know what they're trying to say, but then it doesn't really make any sort of sense in the greater context of, right, the team, the game, just everything. And that's kind of weird, right? The acting is okay, right? But there's not, I guess, a whole lot of depth to any of our characters, really. And you do wonder about, like, Julia Watts' character, right? Isaiah's wife is a bit of a weird one, because kind of like if you remove her, it's still the same, right? So yeah, there's just a lot of odd things going on, right, to create this weird kind of satanic, ritualistic aesthetic. You kind of sacrifice the core of the story, because it's like, okay, then how do we progress this in a logical way? You know? Because it's like when people talk about skulls and crossbones and just all of these, things, right? And it's like, oh, if you're a member of some of these fraternities, right, that furthers your career, right? That can get you jobs, that can get you the presidency. But I think the idea is, and I think what people assume, to, join these things, you do something where then they've got something on you, right? Part of the hazing is so they can kind of control you, right? Which makes sense, right? So if the film was kind of set up like that, boom, I think it would work more. But in this instance, what would be the control mechanism? You know what I mean? That's the thing, right? Like, it doesn't quite work in the way they framed it. I feel anyway. Maybe you might think differently. But yeah, that's the thing, right? So stylistically, this is mad impressive, right? But story-wise, that's where it falls down. That's where it falls down, right? So I don't know, man. If you like sports, if you like horror, and you're intrigued by the combination, maybe you want to go check it out, right? If you like Tipping's other work, yeah, maybe you like to get it. If you like the cast, maybe you'll go check it out, right? Him is in cinemas right now. Dropped last week, right? So yeah, if it sounds maybe like it's piqued your interest, it's your type of film, people, go check it out and let me know, right? Do you agree with, my thinkings on this? Or are you, seeing it a different way, right? Let me know. You feel me? But yeah, that's my take on him.